Greetings and salutations, guys. Eric here with my review of Challengers. Though first, I've been doing these reviews for a few weeks now, and I realized I should probably start saying, hey, like and subscribe. Because I'd love if you liked and subscribe. So yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. I'm going to try to do more of these reviews and maybe even some other content on this channel. We're mulling over some options here. I also have a Substack, by the way, so ericgoldman.substack.com. You can subscribe there. If you're a paid subscriber, you get a lot more content, but anything you can do within your means is much appreciated. Thanks so much for checking this out. So let's dig in, though, to this film. This is the new film, of course, from Luca Guadagnino, who, got a lot of attention. I mean, he's done a lot of great films, but got a lot of attention with Call Me By Your Name a few years ago. A lot of success with that film, but it's proven that he's not going to stick to one thing. I mean, he followed that up with Suspiria and then made a cannibalism movie. All about relationships, dynamics, I guess, in different ways. But I love that he keeps switching it up, even though he has what looks to be his most mainstream film here, certainly one that's getting a ton of attention going into it. But yeah, Zendaya stars here, has Tashi, who once upon a time was a young, up-and-coming tennis sensation. She had an injury that had to sideline her, and now, I almost said the present, but it's really 2019 is kind of the framing device of this film. She is married to Art, who is a tennis star, played by Mike Feist, and they are at a tournament, a kind of low-rent tournament for someone of his success, though there's a reason for that, where he is competing against Patrick, played by Josh O'Connor. And, as I said, this is a framing device. The two of them are having this big match together. But we keep flashing back to first 2006 when she met these two guys who were already friends, and then jumping through time and kind of following the dynamic between them. And the night they met was a very eventful, interesting night that the trailers have certainly done a great job of teasing people with. Maybe not exactly what you're thinking from the trailer, but certainly notable nonetheless, very memorable. And we see how that kind of set the tone for what would follow and the back and forth between them and this sort of love triangle that we know by 2019 she is now married to Art and they have a kid, but there was a long road to get there that we follow back along with while watching the week of this big match in 2019 and both the match itself, but also everything that's going on around it. Look, I am by no means a tennis fan or even really knowledgeable about tennis in general. And I think that if you are, I've actually overheard people talking about this movie who are huge tennis fans, and they're going to have a whole different take on this movie and whether the tennis looks right and, do the actors look credible as tennis players. And I understand that is important for anyone who goes in with that knowledge. For me, going in without that knowledge, I thought, wow, this really worked. It made tennis sort of exciting and sexy and things that I would never think about tennis in general, which just doesn't appeal to me. Just the pace of this movie and how propulsive it is. That's something that really stood out watching it. In no way is this sort of like a drab character drama. It is, it wants to be, you almost feel like this wants to be the sexy rock and roll tennis movie. And I think it is. I think, it is an experience, this movie. You really kind of feel it. And it's just the pace and it's sort of like this unrelenting movement. It's almost operatic. A lot of that has to do with the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who have done so many fantastic scores. Obviously, the Social Network last year, they did a great score for Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. This score is so sort of, it moves. It feels almost like, it reminded me a lot of Run Lola Run. If you've ever seen that movie, it's excellent and you should. It's his 25th anniversary. But that sort of almost like club vibe, like, you're hearing music playing almost techno-ish at a club that's kind of moving everything along. Like in Run Lola Run, where she's running, it's moving. And here it's these people playing tennis and having sex and having arguments. And that's what's fascinating to me, the way the music is used, not just in the tennis matches, where it actually, certainly helps make everything even more intense and exciting. But there are a couple scenes where very intense arguments are happening between characters, just like, one's in a dorm room, and the score is almost competing with the characters arguing. You can almost not hear everything they're saying clearly in a way that is very calculated. It's not like they screwed up and we're like, oh, whoops, the score is too loud. This is clearly something that, I think Reznor and Ross, but also Guadagnino wanted, which is like to feel like that this is sort of the intense level that these characters are living their lives at, and just so much praise for this main trio here. Josh O'Connor's the one I was the least familiar with. I guess I did see him in Emma a few years ago, but hadn't seen a lot of the TV stuff he's done, including The Crown, but he's great as a character who, on one hand, is certainly the one struggling the most sort of like in life in 2019, yet has this sort of innate arrogance that might be earned, but he just carries himself in a certain way, a bravado about him, even as he's kind of scamming his way through life in interesting ways. Mike Feist, who I loved in West Side Story, is great here as a character who, again, very successful, but also, maybe that there's not quite the drive that these other people around him have, even though he's certainly competitive. And then Zendaya, who's the sort of the center of the story in every way, which is to say that, she is the character that this all revolves around, and she is sort of the sun at the center of this movie. She's a bright, shining star in real life, and that is reflected so well in the film, in which she is a character that you see when these young guys meet her in 2006, when they're all like 18, can't keep their eyes off her. And yes, she's beautiful. That's one reason, but also just because she exudes just like that it factor at the time. She is so great as a tennis player, but it's everything she puts out in her aura. And the fact that this character was injured as a young woman and couldn't keep playing tennis, but she's now funneled that drive into, okay, then I'm going to be an amazing coach to my husband, and we are still going to be at the top of the game. And we see how kind of she's running the show as far as like, their careers, what's going to be next, and sort of, leveraging everything. And all three of them are very flawed characters. There's so much manipulation going on between all of them back and forth. I don't think you think of anything of them as like monsters at the same time, though. It's like, yeah, they're living life in a certain way, and it's sort of tunnel vision, and especially for Zendaya's character. And I think she's so great at portraying that, at portraying a character who's just sort of like, this is the only way she knows how to live, is sort of giving her all. And the fact that, she can't be the actual tennis star, what's that meant for her. And then the three of them playing this complicated dynamic between them. And the fact that Art and Patrick once upon a time were just like high school friends and best friends in a way. And there was certainly a level of homoeroticism going on to their relationship. And what does that mean? And the complications around that with, Tashi. And it's I think it's just really well done. And like I said, it's just the pace of it never sort of drags. It never gets sort of laborious. It's both the fact that it's flashing back and forth in time, but also just the pace the film moves at and the way the music moves it along. It's just this ride, in a way that you wouldn't expect from like, it's a love triangle centered around tennis. That could sound like a very different film than I think the one they've made here. The way the tennis match is shot, and both the ones in the past and then the big one in 2019, is so fun. And like I said, maybe it's not completely credible if you're a huge tennis fan, but I think cinematically it works extremely well. There are some shots that seem out of like Sam Raimi, where you're on the ball, like following it along. There's shots that are almost like a first-person shooter video game, except that it's from the point of view of people playing tennis. I loved all that sort of trickery and all the different fun ways they approached, like, how do we shoot tennis? Something that is so important to these three characters has been so ingrained into their lives. And clearly this is a movie where it's not just a tennis match. It means a lot more. I mean, that is the movie. And it makes that work so well by using all these different techniques around it, both audio and visual. And I love that about it. The ending is going to be divisive because in some ways it's an abrupt ending. Certainly it builds to a crescendo and then the film ends, I think, at the appropriate moment. I understand that there are going to be people that are going to be like, but I want to know specifics that this movie's not going to offer you. What exactly happened to some questions are not answered about what is going to happen next. And yet I think it's very appropriate for this movie. I'm okay with all the potential answers to what exactly happens next, because I think that the movie is about characters living life at a certain pace in a certain way, that I think the ending sort of sums up in a really great way. And so it's not that kind of story. That ending feels completely right for the kind of film this is and the energy that the film is operating at. So yeah, I really dug this movie. It's one of my favorites so far this year. And even though I thought it had a great trailer, I still didn't really know going in if I'd be that into it. But I thought, yeah, just a really cool experience. And I think I used that word earlier, but that's what I say. It's like, movies can move you in different ways, and movies can be like, oh, this is such a great intricate story and twists and turns. And there are some moments in this movie that were like, ooh, when people say things and do things for certainly that it's not like the story doesn't mean anything. It means everything, but as far as the character dynamics. But I think this movie is really kind of this operatic level it's operating at. That's what really impressed me about it. And just, it in some ways it reminded me of Oppenheimer, a movie that also had that sort of like, we're moving through and the score is so important and we're just like this tunnel vision of characters. Very different stakes, I understand, with what Oppenheimer was doing, what's happening here, and yet still, having a director who's completely invested in what he's doing with the characters he's operating at. Same thing here. So those are my thoughts on Challengers. Hope you guys like it if you see it, and like and subscribe. I'm going to try to say that each video, not too many times, but we'll see how it goes. All right, thanks guys.